Thank you, and I'm very excited to be here with everyone. I know that you've went through several sessions here, so I'll try to be brief and give you some of the updates on SKAdNetwork 4.0. And I think it was a great kind of last session talking about the ad monetization, how to engage with your users, how to monetize them as much as possible. Now I'm going to pass to the other side of the acquisition cost. How can you acquire users and measure your results? And SKAdNetwork is the framework, the latest framework on iOS by Apple to help you do that. So my name is Eran. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Singular. Singular is a mobile measurement partner, an MMP, which means that we provide an analytics platform for marketers, for app developers to understand how their mobile campaigns go to and provide results, performance. So you can see your ROI, your return on investment of each campaign, each creative that you're running. And one of the biggest challenges that happened in the industry lately is on iOS with the privacy changes. I'm sure everyone has heard so far by now about the ATT pop-up, this kind of pop-up that is required for users to provide consent for tracking, which is what Apple introduced in iOS 14. And SKAdNetwork is the solution to try to provide measurement, even when the user says they don't want to be tracked. So we're going to walk through exactly what SKAdNetwork means and really focus on the latest changes, the big upcoming version, SKAdNetwork 4.0, the new features there, and how we see opportunities in the industry to really leverage it. So let's move on to the slides. So first of all, it's good to understand what solutions are there for measurement, for attribution in iOS. How can you tell how many users came from your campaigns, how much you've spent on these campaigns, and how many of those users were qualified users, how much they actually contributed to your performance? So if we try to simplify, there are two general strategies. One strategy is based on device level attribution. So for each user, knowing exactly where they came from and understanding what were the results. The challenge with device level is the latest ATT privacy changes in iOS, the app tracking transparency, which means that only users who clicked allow tracking, you can actually attribute. And because that ratio today is relatively low, on average, it's only around 20%, 25%. And the fact is that the user has to opt in twice to get attribution for them to work, both on the publisher app and the advertiser app. It means that globally, it's a very limited number of users who actually allow tracking and that you can actually attribute by device level. So it's kind of considered a legacy solution that is still relevant on a sample basis, but can't really apply for all your users worldwide. Now, the new solution, the new framework that Apple designed as part of the privacy changes is what's called SKAdNetwork. Sometimes we refer to it as SKAN. The thing about SKAN is that it's completely anonymized, completely aggregated, very different from what the industry has been used to. But the big advantage is that it's available for everyone, all users, regardless of whether they allow tracking or not allow tracking. So this is huge. It means that you can use SKAdNetwork for all your users, regardless of consent. And a big change in the industry has been working towards how to leverage SKAdNetwork with all its challenges to get measurement because it applies to all your users, which is a major advantage. Now let's try to give a quick recap on SKAdNetwork, exactly what it means, how it's working, and then we'll talk about the big changes in SKAdNetwork version 4.0, which was just released in iOS 16.1. So SKAdNetwork, at high level, it's an acronym kind of calling StoreKit Ad Network, designed by Apple for privacy-preserving mobile app install attribution. The idea is it tries to provide attribution, so marketers would understand how many users came from which campaigns and what these users do without compromising the user's identity. So again, without getting to device-level attribution, but still providing you a good aggregated result of your performance. So how does it work like? And there's many technical details here. We're not going to dive into everything. You can feel free to ask me on the Q&A part, but I try to walk you through the flow step by step. So first of all, the ad network, such as Facebook, Google, or any one of the mobile ad networks out there, starts by showing an ad on the publisher app with what's called the SKAN campaign ID. Then once the user clicks the ad and redirects, gets to the App Store, then downloads the app and launches it, then you have the opportunity as an advertiser to update what's called a conversion value. It's basically a number between 0 and 63 that signifies what's the value of the user. The challenge is, beyond just deciding what's this number about, is you have to do it in the first 24 hours after the install, which is one of the biggest challenges in SKAdNetwork today. We're going to talk about it. So let's say that the user that we've just acquired updated the conversion value with some kind of number. Then there's a random timer that starts in SKAdNetwork that sends, that eventually after 24 to 48 hours, sends a post back, sends a notification to the network telling the network, hey, you got a new user coming from your network with this specific value. And if the number of installs after a certain threshold, sometimes referred to as the privacy threshold, if you have enough volume, then that conversion value would be included in the postback. So bottom line, there's a pretty complicated flow, as you can understand, from publisher to advertiser to send that postback to the network with this conversion value involved to try to understand your performance on SKAdNetwork. So let's try to kind of summarize what is the big challenge in SKAdNetwork. Why is it so difficult to work with when Apple kind of introduced this new framework? So first of all, it starts by collecting the data. You understand that there's postback notifications being sent to all the networks. So the marketing team has to figure out how to collect all that information back and try to understand it, which usually is heavy on the engineering. This is, by the way, where MMP get involved. So MMPs, such as us, we do the integration work to really connect with all the networks and collect all the data to a single place and consolidate it for you. Then let's say that you collected all the data, then part of the work is to enrich it, join it with everything else that you're seeing. So I understand what is the meaning of the SKAdNetwork data, how it is connected to your campaigns, your assets, your ad groups, and understanding your bottom line results. So I understand this campaign drove this number of installs, and that's the revenue that they generated. Pretty complicated. Then there's the whole management of conversion values. So deciding what exactly is the number to assign to each user, this number between 0 and 63. You need to encode it in that app in real time. And then you need to go get back the resulted conversion values and understand their meaning. So there's an entire flow dedicated to really manage these conversion values so you can get end results. And lastly, there's what we kind of mentioned in the end of privacy thresholds. Apple basically anonymizes part of the data and censor the data, so it would be difficult to understand exactly what users generated what. So basically, on average, 21% of the scan data is censored. You can't even see their data properly. So there's more things that you can do in terms of data science, modeling on top to uncover what is the censored information. So bottom line, all of these challenges revolve around data challenges. So you need to collect the data, you need to enrich it, you need to manage all the conversion values, you need to model the missing information to get to bottom line results. How much you're spending on SKAN campaigns, how much you're getting in back. So this is a big part of the challenge that advertisers have. So if I try to focus on the solutions, so what do the solutions have today for SKAdNetwork? If I try to simplify, there are three basic layers in how it works, so kind of building blocks. The first foundation is what we call the smart conversion management. This is the entire layer, kind of first building block that handles on the conversion values for you. So you, for example, decide a conversion model. You decide, okay, so I expect that users who made this amount of purchases or did pass this number of levels, they would have a higher value for me. So once you decide on the specific model, then the conversion management allocates, assign those users with values based on the first 24 hours to get that meaning back. Then let's say you had the foundation. The next step is the reporting side. So you're encoding conversion values, you're starting your campaigns with all the media networks out there, you're getting back the results, and you want to understand the reporting, your actual ROI or ROAS, your CPAs, everything for your SKAN campaign. So that second layer provides you that reporting to show you your actual results. Then let's say you had the conversion values, you have the reporting, then you need to deal with the missing information. That's kind of the data science on top, the data modeling on top. So understanding for the censored information, for missing information, for the limited windows, how can I understand exactly what's your true performance on top, what's your exactly results from these, and kind of the true, let's say, first day cohort of ROAS or 7-day cohort of ROAS based on kind of the data that you're getting and completing the censored information. So all this provides like sort of like a pyramid, as we kind of imagined it, of like giving the full end-to-end results to actually look at your scan performance. Now, if I try to kind of demonstrate or like try to show what's the end results that you want to expect with SKAdNetwork, is, I know that the numbers here might be difficult to look at from kind of the screen, but I'll just walk through what we're seeing here. Is basically providing a report with the full analytics end-to-end of your best performing campaigns. So imagine that for a specific source, such as Google, you'll see your specific game, your specific campaign, and then you'll see how much you've spent on that campaign, such as your cost, how many impressions or clicks you've received, how many SKAdNetwork installs, how many installs, again, without the need for consent, total installs across all users that came from these campaigns. You can calculate from this your CPI, your CPM, your CPC. You can even decode back your revenue coming from the conversion values, so showing you a relative ROI for your campaigns. But then the real magic is on the green right side, is the model data on top. So for all the privacy threshold, anonymized conversion values, showing you the next ROI, basically the high ROI based on uncensored information, or even showing you longer cohorts in 24 hours. So the idea is, again, using data science to show you the full results. And this has also been a big focus for us at Singular, to provide the best reporting, the best long cohorts, the best ROI reporting for SKAN campaigns, so that advertisers can advertise really efficiently at scale with the SKAdNetwork. So that was kind of a brief on SKAdNetwork status, the challenges, the solutions out there. Now let's focus on what's happening there. What are the big changes that were announced by Apple in the last WWDC and now released as part of iOS 16.1? In the kind of a TLDR, it's a massive opportunity for companies who wanted to advertise in iOS, and SKAdNetwork was very challenging for them, to now have very major updates that were released to get even better measurement, more accurate and more long-term measurement. So we'll walk through kind of the updated announcements and how this is going to affect SKAdNetwork. So at high level, we have 4 major updates announced as part of SKAN 4 or SKAdNetwork 4.0. All are already available from iOS 16.1. The first update that we won't focus as much about, but is really exciting, is web-to-app support. Before, it only supported app-to-app, so you could advertise in, like Google's YouTube native app, for example, to kind of the campaigns originating from it. But if you had traffic coming from mobile web, basically from browsers, you couldn't support SKAdNetwork. So Apple basically solved this, now allows any traffic coming from Safari, essentially, to be attributed with SKAdNetwork. The second piece is around granularity and getting to deeper details about your scan performance. Previously, it was pretty high level, only at this campaign level. We're going to talk about the new improvements that are going to be available in SKAN 4. The next piece is around conversion values. This number between 0 and 63, pretty complex to think about. There's now major updates there and new abilities to really use that information. And lastly, probably the most exciting update in SKAN 4 is the multiple postbacks and longer cohorts. No longer you have only the limited 24 hours to update conversion values. Now you're going to have multiple postbacks and longer cohorts up to 35 days to send you in that information. This is probably the biggest change and the big news for especially gaming developers using SKAdNetwork. I'm going to dive into some of these one by one to share a bit more detail. So let's start with the granularity and source identifiers. This is a new capability coming up in SKAN 4. This is a slide that Apple included in WWDC that tries to demonstrate it. There's some technical numbers and digits here, so we don't need to dive too much into the detail. But the idea here is, if we focus on the low, basically on the left part of this scale, you can see kind of the 39 is the highlighted digit. This is for low scale, and that's what they refer to as the campaign ID. So basically, I said before, you only had a campaign identifier. Those 2 digits, let's say 39 as an example, and that was the only information that you're getting on where the user came from. So this was pretty limited granularity because you basically could only understand like the campaign level performance that you have. But now Apple is introducing 2 additional digits to this identifier. So they're splitting it by tiers, by volume tiers. So the higher the volume that you're running with SKAN, the more granularity you'll get. So at medium tier, they're saying you're gonna get another digit, 7 in this example. And in the highest tier, you're gonna get another digit representing kind of the identifier of the user, which gets to, in this example, is 5. So at the highest level, you get 4 different digits identifying the source of this user. So basically, Apple tried to give an example of how you can use this information. For example, encode in the 3rd digit the location of the user, like the country that they came from. Or in the next digit, you can encode kind of the placement that you're coming from. All these digits and kind of the management of this is happening at the AdNetwork side. So Google and Facebook and others would basically use these digits to provide more information. But I think the value for advertisers who are using SKAN, it basically means that for them, if they run with higher volumes, they can expect to get deeper granular levels, such as country level breakdown, or even ideally creative level breakdown. So seeing exactly the results for each creative in SKAdNetwork. So that's one of the promises that can happen with SKAN 4. Moving on to the next major update that was announced there was the conversion values. So this number between 0 and 63, which exists in previous versions of SKAN, this still exists today, and you can still work with this in SKAN 4.0. But part of the challenge was the privacy thresholds. The lower volumes that game developers were running, they didn't get any conversion value. They didn't get that number. So that's basically demonstrated here in the left side of the chart, of like the low tier. Apple basically introduced a new type of conversion value. They call it the Coarse conversion value, which is kind of the medium tier. They're basically saying if you don't have enough high volume to get the full conversion value, sometimes they call it the fine conversion value, which is the number, the same number that we're used to, and you're kind of in the middle, then you can get kind of like a basic version of the conversion value. They call it the Coarse conversion value, which is a very simplified version. It only has values of low, medium, and high. So the idea is that when you run at high scale, you get the same conversion value that you receive today. But if you're at the medium level, you're at least going to have a basic version, a low, medium, or high result that you can still use to optimize your users even at lower scales. So again, the idea here is that you would get a simplified version of conversion values called the Coarse conversion values, especially suited for the medium volumes of SKAN. Now let's talk about the third and really big impact feature that was announced in SKAN, and basically the entire industry has been really excited about, is the multiple postbacks and long cohorts. So the idea is that previously, for every install, you got only 1 postback after basically 24 hours plus a certain timer. So it was a very limited time in which you can encode the value of the user. Now Apple basically introduced the ability to send up to 3 different postback from the install time. And those would be with set windows, so set timers from the install. So the first postback would be sent after 2 days, the second postback after up to 7 days, and the third postback after up to 35 days. So if you can imagine that you can encode suddenly more information about the user experience through 35 days from the install, suddenly you can get much more information about the value, about the revenue of this user, and send it as a postback for the networks and also analyze it for yourselves. So it gives much more opportunity to encode the value of the users throughout their experience. The caveat here is that the second postback and third postback only support Coarse conversion values. So if I go back to the previous slide on the Coarse value, this very simplified version, low, medium, and high, very basic one, that's the only value that will be included in the second postback and third postback. So again, trying to summarize, you're getting longer term value of the users, which is a huge advantage now that's introduced in SKAN, but it's going to be a very basic signal. It's not like the encoded number that we're used to. It's going to be a much more limited value that we need to be very smart about encoding that information there. So let's try to kind of summarize in a flow of a slide. This is another slide that Apple actually included in their documentation of SKAN 4 that was just included in iOS 16.1. They try to show kind of the experience of the user from the install time, and also show some of the caveats that are included there. So again, it shows the 3 different postbacks with 3 different time windows, 2 days, 7 days, and 35 days to 3 different postbacks. They also show the random timers. They say at the end of the 2 days, Apple is going to count like 24 to 48 hours and send the first post back. But then they also included another caveat, something that adds some complexity here, is that the random timer for the second postback and third postback are for 24 to 144 hours. So let me simplify for you. It's 1 to 6 days from the postback time. So generally, it means that if you want to see the value or the performance of your campaigns after 35 days from your install, you need to wait those 35 days to encode that last opportunity to encode your conversion value, and then still wait another 6 days from 35 days, so a total of 42 days from the install date to understand the end result of the campaign. So pretty complicated, as you probably can understand, some randomness still, some more value there, but pretty difficult to work with. But that's kind of the end result of at least getting additional value for your campaigns and understanding their best performance. This slide, pretty complicated. Again, you can also see these in our blog post if you want to dig in, but it tries to summarize all the changes of SKAN 4 with all the little details. So essentially, it shows that with higher volumes, you get more information. And with longer postbacks that are suddenly available, you're getting a bit more limited information, but still very useful. So just to give an example, in the first postback, the conversion window is going to be up to 2 days, like we mentioned earlier. The delay is going to be a random timer of 1 to 2 days, so that 24 to 48 hours, which is kind of similar to what we have with SKAN today. And the more volume that you have, these tiers of volume, the more information you're going to get. So in the beginning, you're only going to get this 2-digit source identifier, the campaign ID, exactly like you used to have today. But if you get more volume, you'd have the coarse conversion value, like I mentioned, the high, medium, low tiers. And for higher volumes, you'd even get the additional digits for the source identifier, so the ability to get higher granularity for reporting, and also the fine conversion value, the number between 0 and 63, like SKAN 3 that we have today for high value, high volume campaigns. Then on the second and third postback, you have the 7-day window and the 35 window. You're going to have a longer delay, a random delay of 1 to 6 days for each one of these. So it can take more time until you actually get these results. And you're only going to get the coarse conversion value, the high, medium, low conversion value for these users. I also note that the second and third postbacks are only available for the campaign level granularity, only 2 digits for the source identifier. So, but the bottom line here for the second and third postbacks are, again, you're getting more details about the longer cohorts of these users, but it's going to be pretty limited. Only high-level granularity and only high, medium, low signal for these users. Well, there's a lot of details here, so I try to kind of get through all the technical details and show you, okay, so what can you expect from your MMP reports from the SKAdNetwork solutions out there? And how do we think about like the solution for SKAN 4, how you can leverage it to the max? So basically, first of all, what we can expect is deeper granularity. Before, you only had the campaign level reporting for your SKAN, seeing ROI at the campaign level. Now you can expect deeper granular levels, so suddenly seeing your country level performance for each campaign, or possibly, ideally, even creative level results. So the idea is to get more granular details from reporting out of the box. This is already pretty exciting for us as a measurement platform. Then you can expect that you now have multiple conversion models to work with. You understand that there is now multiple types of conversion values. So you need to decide on the events that you want to rely on, such as level completes, tutorial completes, any purchases values or add-on values that you want to rely on. And you want to map it not only for this number of 0 to 63, but also to the coarse conversion value, deciding who's considered the low value users, who's considered the medium value user, and who's a very high value user, kind of the whale type of user that you want to kind of focus on. And in addition, you'll have now multiple postbacks. So beyond just the general model that you have, you can think about what's considered a high-value user after 7 days or after 35 days. And usually there would be different ranges. Let's say after 7 days, they would have a higher purchase value of value users for these users and beyond. So the idea is to use multiple models to get the most out of SKAN4 signal. And lastly, and this is what we're basically very excited about, is that you'll be able to complete your missing information in the single place, in the deepest granularity possible, and with the longer cohort signal. So if you use the conversion models the best way, and you use this to basically send conversion values for 7 days and 35 days, then I assume it's probably difficult to see in the screen, but you see the granular reporting, kind of the cost, the installs, the campaigns, the revenue coming at the deepest granularity possible, but also the modeled revenue and ROI for your 7-day cohorts and your 35-level cohorts, which is really something that the gaming developers out there were really expecting or needed to see for SKAN, because a lot of the signage really can affect your overall performance on SKAN and allow you to acquire more users because you see that they're really valuable after longer periods of time. So that's the last slide, kind of the key takeaways, maybe to summarize. How can you prepare for SKAN4? What can you do today to really get the maximum of SKAN4 changes? So the first biggest important change for SKAN4 is to prepare to update your MMP SDKs that support SKAN4. In Singular, our customers already have the SKAN4 supported SDK live for anyone who wants to try the beta, test the SKAN4 and try to starting some test campaigns in SKAN. For it, definitely I encourage everyone to kind of look at your MMP and see if you can upgrade for SKAN4. Next is, if you're relying on some mobile web traffic, so far you couldn't really use SKAN for these. So if you're running with them, definitely ask them if they plan to support SKAN4, because it gives you an opportunity to measure them by SKAN across all your users. Of course, if you're working with kind of top media partners, you can share, ask them about their plans, understand exactly what's planned to update in the granularity level, if they're planning to add country level information or creative level information. And lastly, probably the most important planning that you have to do beyond updating the SDKs is plan how to leverage coarse values. So how do you regard a high or medium or low value user to understand how you would want to use the SKAN solution to really encode those values accordingly, and think about the strategy for those 3 postbacks. So the high value user, how does it differ between after the 2nd-day window, the 7-day window, and the 35-day window? All of these would help you understand how to get the most from SKAN4 and to see really your full performance end to end. I think I'll stop here because I know it's